So now that we drew up the floor plan, we need to put dimensions on it, even though it is correctly dimensioned. And if you gave somebody this as an AutoCAD base, they would be able to determine what the different dimensions and sizes are. But in order to print and give somebody a printout, you do need to put dimensions and then also annotate your keynotes. So we did create a layer for dimensions, dim, or dims if we were properly using all of the 4 letters of the code, but we need to create a correct dimension style that is going to dimension things in the scale that and the format that we wanted. So I'll go back to my trusty command line and type dim style. And it usually does add things too. So there's the standard, and we're going to create one for this class, the SAT33, and for quarter inch scale, which the multiplier for that is 48, and we don't want it annotative. So we're going to continue here. And I'm going to start with the primary unit setting. So as the file, I want these to be architectural units, and you'll see just because the units are set for your file and the commands that you're getting as you're drafting, that doesn't mean the dimensions are set there. And the same precision, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 is really not measurable in a constructible way. And the fractions, diagonal is what we mostly use, so it's previewing here what they'll look like. No rounding off, the scale factor should be 1, and the 0 suppression, so we don't want 0 inches suppressed, just 0 feet. So 10 feet to 0 inches should be shown as such. And then the degrees are decimal, and as we said, we like them to 2 zeros there. Okay, so the next step we're going to adjust is our fit. So we want to set it to the best fit, and the important part here is we want that overall scale to be 48. So that's scaling the size of the dimension. And there's a way to work it through the annotative option, and if you click annotative, then this is not going to work properly. So just make sure that this selection is correctly set up here. And the final step is going to be our symbols and arrows, and you can also customize text and such. So we don't actually use arrows for architectural dimensions, we use the architectural tick. For leader, closed field is sufficient, and the arrow size as set up is fine. You can also set the jog angles, jog height factors. There are things that you can set up under text as far as the style goes, and the color, and so on. Okay, so let's see our dimensions here in action. So I'm going to go to the Annotate tab. Actually, under Annotate tab, there are some additional options for dimensions. You have a dimension also, just a basic option in the General tab. So you can do linear, quick, different types of dimensions. And you can also go ahead and type dim, and align is going to let you do the align dimension. Linear is just going to pull out, as you can see, aligns for the angle. Linear preview is just going to pull it down straight. So most of the time when you're picking a command, you can hover like this over the command, and it's going to tell you what it's doing. Okay, so we have the correct layer and everything here. And this is our properties menu, which should always be open. And we are in the middle of our command, and just making sure, okay, and we're using the dim align here. So this should be our 13 feet. and you can see that the correct dimension style is selected here. Now again, make sure your correct dimension style and your correct layer is selected. If one of these is off, no matter whether you set them up or not, they're not going to work. So then I can keep pressing the space bar and going back to my dimension command and dimension all of the other pieces. So the dimensions are a little bit on the big side. This is what how they scale for the 1/4 inch. A lot of times we might have a plan scale to 1/8 of an inch, and let me just show you what that would look like. So just so you know how you can adjust them if you want to. So I'm going to create a new one based on this one and just call that 96, which is more appropriate for 1/8 inch. Okay, not annotative, and we're starting with the previous one. So we have all the different settings that we already did, and the only thing I'm going to change here is the fit and make this 96. So now you'll see as I select it, this is 48, and if I change it to 96, it is actually going to be sized up to a much bigger floor plan. Right, so these guys are fairly big. Another way you can modify the size would be actually to go and modify the text. So right now the text height is 3/16, which is why our dimensions are so huge. So let's set them to 1/8, right? For standard writing. And we probably want to do that for the other one as well. Now 3/16 is not much bigger than 1/8, but it is going to be more in line with what we're trying to achieve. So now you can see they got a little bit smaller, and they should be exactly in proportion to the plan, if you drew the plan correctly, to how it looked like on your letter size sheet. So these are the basics of the dimensioning, and then if I was dimensioning even further smaller parts of this, again, the closest row would show all of the smallest dimensions of the window, and then the next row shows the overall dimension, like on this wall. So have fun with your dimensioning.